What's up, guys? My name is Sawyerhartman, and today we're here to talk about the 10 beginner photography mistakes that you and almost every other photographer in the world is likely to run into, and more importantly, how to solve them. So, 10 beginner photography tips that every photographer is going to run into, not just beginners. Want to clarify that this is just good advice for everyone, including myself. Number one, be background conscious. You've probably heard this a ton in photography, but you want to make sure there's no trees growing out of the head of your subject. Now, that advice is pretty basic, but I want to illustrate somewhere where you can actually use this to your advantage. By being background conscious, you can actually find what's called a frame within a frame. You can start to manipulate the background to actually interact with your photo, but it all starts with becoming aware that the background is there and making sure that it doesn't mess with your photo. Number two on the list is a trick that I just learned a couple months ago, and it has saved my life. Number two is stop shooting in automatic. There's a better way. Now, no matter whether you shoot on Sony, Canon, Panasonic, whatever else is out there, almost every camera has this function, and it's so nice to use. Right here on the top of your camera where you select automatic, there's also a function called AV. Now, when you're first starting your journey into photography, chances are you want to take photos that have a blurry background that look really nice, like the professional photos that you want to take later in your career. Problem is, when you shoot in automatic, it changes all of your settings just to fit whatever's going on in the world. But oftentimes, one of the first settings to get changed in automatic is the f-stop of your camera. But to simply put it, the lower the number f-stop that you're shooting at, the more light that comes into the camera, the blurrier the background. Everyone's always wondering how you get blurry backgrounds. You have to buy lenses that have a low f-stop, and then you also have to shoot at them. So what the setting AV does, or also known as aperture priority, it allows you to lock your f-stop. So you tell your camera, I want to shoot at f2.8 so I have a nice blurry background. And then your camera will change every other setting to mimic automatic except for changing your f-stop. So when you're shooting photos and you just want to be snapping, you want all of your settings to look right, but you still want that blurry background, shoot in AV. It will literally change your life. You're welcome. Thank Rob Stroke, because he showed me. I don't know how I went 15 years without knowing that. Tip number three is be careful when you're coloring your photos. Now, everyone has their own style, or they will find it. It might be super saturated, vibrant colors. It might be desaturated, moody, filmy looking photos. But the one thing you want to be careful about is when you start pushing your saturation too high. Now, these are two examples that I can just show you from my own work, and I struggle with this all the time. Here's a beautiful photo of Angelique, but if you look in the greens, it starts doing that. And when you see that, it's just like, ooh, the entire photo must not have actually looked like this in real life, because he's feeling the need to push the colors beyond where they can even go. So be careful. I don't want to throw shade at anyone's style, but if you're going to go for really bright, vibrant colors, that's fine. But be very careful that you're not pushing them beyond their limits. People will notice, including yourself, later on down the road. But I'll get more into color grading in one of the other steps. Let's just keep moving forward. Number four will instantly change your photos in one click. Grab your camera right now, go into a menu, and when it says image quality or format type, click that and see if your camera can shoot in RAW. Shooting in RAW allows your camera to capture so much more information that when you're editing, you can change things like white balance, exposure, and there's just so much more that you can do in the editing of your photo. Whether you shoot on like a Canon T6i or a 70D or even a G7X, they all shoot RAW. Go into your camera settings, just look for it. Now, number five is probably one of my favorite aspects of photography, but this mistake people make all the time. They look at someone's photo and they wonder why they can't capture something like that. It comes down to lens choice. Lens choice is everything. It's the reason that I have over like 20 camera lenses. When you look at someone's photo, they might be using a very specific lens that has a very specific style. So for all of the beginners out there, or even amateurs or people who might not have gotten to play with all these different lenses, I went and did a test on my camera to show you exactly how different lenses affect the photo. Whatever lens you're using on your camera is going to have a number value assigned to it with a millimeter afterwards. They'll typically range from 14 millimeter up to 200 millimeter on standard lenses. 14 millimeters zoomed out and super wide, 200 millimeters zoomed all the way in. But it actually does a couple other things you might not notice. This photo of Angelique is taken on a 14 millimeter lens. Now, all of the photos after it are the exact same framing of her face, but I took them on different lenses. This is what a 14 millimeter lens looks like, a 24 millimeter lens, a 35 millimeter lens, a 50 millimeter lens, 85 millimeter lens, 135 millimeter lens, and finally a 200 millimeter lens. You can tell not only does it change the shape of her face, it dramatically increases or decreases the background, the compression of the background. Number 6 is a super simple mistake people are making, and it's just overexposing their photos. If you get a lot of your inspiration from model photography or fashion photography or photos of people who just look really great, especially digitally, a lot of those photos are super bright and white and they pop and they catch you, and people want to capture that as well. That look is achieved in editing. You got to know that. Back 20 years ago when we were shooting on film, the most important thing to do was to preserve the shadows, the dark parts of your photo, because if those got too dark, you couldn't bring the information back. Now, shooting on digital cameras, it's the exact opposite. You can actually shoot your photos quite dark and bring back a lot of detail. However, on digital cameras, the highlights, as soon as the bright parts of your photo are overexposed, the information is gone. The camera is not recording it. So to achieve a photo like this, which I actually took in Australia, I first started with a perfectly exposed photo that looked like this. I then applied again my Instant Banger preset from my preset pack on that, which is designed to make things pop. But whether you're using presets or not, you first have to start with a perfectly exposed photo. The 7th mistake that people are making, and it drives me mad, is they're not taking photos of the moment. The moment. If you're on safari in Africa and you see a cheetah and you just snap a photo of it sleeping in the grass, cool, you got a photo of a cheetah. Now, imagine waiting until sunset or sunrise, until the lighting was perfect, and that cheetah happens to get up and find a little bit of prey, and you stalk it and you wait, and it's running through, and right as it pounces at the animal, you snap the shot of its face, its intensity, its animal instincts, and when you show that photo to people, they feel the energy of what it was like to be there. Wow, right? I mean, I have goosebumps. That's what photography is all about. 8th mistake people are making is they're not painting with light. Now, if you've ever been on a photo shoot and your biggest concern is just making sure the person has light on their face, you're in the beginning stages of photo shoots, and that's a very exciting time, because now, once you've mastered just taking someone's photo, you can start getting creative. If you're a black and white photographer, then you know shadows are a very cool way to make a black and white photo stand out. So I challenge you, the next time you're out shooting and someone wants a picture of them, or your girlfriend's at the pool and wants a picture, instead of just taking out your camera and taking a picture, try pulling like a palm tree off of a branch, or try pulling orange leaves off a fall tree. Whatever it is, put it in front of the lens. Get creative. Now you're gonna move from just taking a photo and you're gonna start creating a photo. And one of the best ways to do that is by using light and shadows to help add depth to your photo. Now, the 9th biggest mistake I think photographers are making right now, especially in the travel genre, is by taking the safe and obvious photograph. If you walk up to a beautiful waterfall and you're like, holy shit, that is a beautiful waterfall, and you lift your camera at eye level and you snap a photo of it, you are not statistically the first person to have ever found that photograph. So if it makes you feel better to capture that, capture that. But as soon as you're done taking that safe, obvious photograph, almost everyone is probably captured, then start looking around. Find new, interesting perspectives. Find a nice bush to shoot through. You know, find the bush. Merch coming soon. Think bigger. If it's a beautiful waterfall you're at and you're thinking of just taking a photo of someone just sitting there smiling, think maybe, well, what happens if I put on a telephoto lens and walk way back there and get the same photo? Like, that one looks like this, which is a completely different photograph. I've been creating on Instagram and YouTube since these platforms started, and I've seen a lot of photographers come and go. And 100% of the time, the photographers that I see rise up and actually hold their position and create good stuff are the ones who are just experimenting and having fun. They didn't see them somewhere, try to copy them, and just try to ride coattails. It's beyond okay to be inspired by people's work, but instead of trying to copy it, try to figure out what they're doing so that you can put it into your own work. Which transitions us to the last mistake of this video photographers are making, and it's number 10. I think every photographer that is up and coming and that is learning a program like Lightroom should be buying creators' presets. A lot of people would argue that you shouldn't buy someone else's presets, you should develop a style of your own. And here is why I disagree with them 150%. When you're learning a program like Lightroom, there are millions of variations of ways you can color a photo. If you try to learn a program like Lightroom to learn how to edit like some of your favorite photographers, not using presets is essentially like learning to play the guitar like the musicians you love without ever learning their songs. I buy creators' presets all the time. And here's why. It's not because I need them to show me how to edit. It's because maybe I want to know what color blue they were using for their waters. I might buy an entire preset pack just to figure out what combination of sliders and things they did to make the skin tone look that way. So once I buy it, I click the preset and I look at all of their settings. I'm like, oh my God, that's how they did that. Aside from being able to buy a preset and essentially make your feed look professional in like 10 minutes, that one thing right there is the entire reason that I would recommend buying them. Learn from people. So with that being said, Creator Presets, my company, we sell presets from literally myself and like almost every real big creator on Instagram. Links in the description below. They work with Lightroom, Photoshop, Lightroom Mobile. And guys, those are the 10 beginner mistakes that I think every beginning and amateur photographer really makes, and how to, more importantly, correct them. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. I will be teaching you guys about photography and photography all of 2018. And as always, I love you guys very much. Stay motivated, stay inspired, and never stop creating. Peace.